Welcome back to Word of Mouth. My name is Myers, one of the co-hosts. Steven's out on a mission trip right now. He's on his way to Guatemala effective tomorrow. Mr. Myles Cheatum is back, joining me. Dylan, one of our rules with the podcast is if you've ever been on, you can come back on, but we prefer that you come back on with a guest.
Yeah. No, I like that. So
that's kind of how, part of how you're here. Guys, welcome. Mr. Dylan Rizzo, is that how you see it?
Rizzo, R-I-Z-Z-O.
Yes,
Italian.
sir. Welcome.
Thank you, man.
We're stoked to have you here. Tell us, who are you? Why are you here, man?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and shout out to Myles. He's been a good friend to me, so I appreciate having friends with good conversation with old friends and hopefully new friends.
Hopefully. We'll see.
I think we'll be able to have a lot in common. But yeah, man, excited to be on. Love having conversations like this, meeting other cool people in Birmingham, doing cool things, different things. Always love meeting new people. The older I get, I'm like, I want to meet new people doing different things, different interests than me. But Dylan Rizzo. I'm from Baton Rouge, actually.
Okay.
So from the boot. That's actually how me and Myles got connected.
Yeah. Shout out Chase Day.
Shout out Chase Day, my man. One of my best friends growing up, ended up becoming a close friend of his. He moved to Birmingham, so we got connected. But yeah, a little bit about me. Grew up in Baton Rouge. Lived there my whole life until I was 16. My dad started a church there when he was like 26. So sometimes I'm like 29, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm 1 year away, so
right.
no pressure.
I'm like struggling to pick out the right candle for my wife at Home Goods.
Yeah.
And grew up there, moved to Birmingham when I was 16, went to Briarwood, so local high school here.
Yeah.
Finished there my junior and senior year. Quickly after that, went and played football at a school. I know you're like, this guy was the long snapper or left bench.
100%.
But I was a little bigger. I played defensive back there for a year. Did awful in school. Like, had the first, semester where you got to do 15 hours.
Yep.
And then I tried to finesse it the next semester where I was like, oh my gosh, I can do 12 hours and I can also do 9 of them online.
Right.
Thinking like, oh, this is going to be great. I'll take care of my stuff. It's going to be awesome. Worst semester of my life. Yeah. So if you're choosing online in person, go in person. Didn't do great in school. I ended up getting injured my first season. So literally the scrimmage before the first game, I broke my wrist, snapped my wrist. Ouch. So I was out from the first game until the last game. So if we would have went like a few more weeks, I would have been able to come back. But just the timing, measured up perfect. And then decided not to go back. Kind of spent the whole summer. I procrastinated it and called my coach like 2 weeks before, and I was like, hey, it's been great, but I'm not going to be returning.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had one of those calls you pushed off for a long time.
Yeah.
And then from there, spent about 6 months in Birmingham and had no idea what I wanted to do. It's like, am I going to go back into the, traditional, maybe I go state college? My family's real involved at Church of the Highlands. My dad's a pastor there. They had kind of just started revamping the college that they have there called Highlands College.
Yeah.
So I kind of contemplated that for a minute, but I was like, I want to get out of Birmingham. I want to be kind of in a new city, a new context, meet new people. So I spent about 6 months just trying to figure out what I was going to do. One of my main priorities in those 6 months was just getting around good people. So hung out with a lot of the people from the church and some old friends. And then I decided to move up to New York. So I lived in Manhattan from like 20 years old until I was about 24, coincidentally moved back right before the pandemic. Which was a great move because New York was a little bit of a different story than Birmingham. And been here since, man. Family's here. I got married. It was a big year for me last year. I got married July 8th.
Come on.
We found out my wife was pregnant about 6 weeks later. So
Congratulations.
Lots of life change.
with the
all at
honeymoon,
once.
man, it got me. We found out, that is actually how babies are made.
Yep.
And
Praise God.
but it's been the biggest blessing of all time. I can't. At first, you're like, okay, we're young. Like, we definitely expected to do things, travel, start things, spend time just together.
Yeah.
Because we had met in December of 2023.
Okay.
So we moved
fast.
quick,
yeah.
man.
Quick turnaround.
You
Got
knew.
him.
You knew right away.
I knew. I mean, I've told him. He knows the story a little bit. We've hung out with my wife. I started talking to her for about 2 weeks. We met years ago. I connected with her again on Instagram. I'm an Instagram DM success story.
Come on.
So, yeah, whatever that means. And then I told her I loved her the first day we ever met. And I wasn't that type. I had past girlfriends for a long time. Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I never move fast, I promise.
Uh-huh.
And then we got engaged March 15th, got married July 8th. Found out we were, having a baby. Found out it was a boy.
Come on.
Was really excited there. And
awesome.
we're about a month out now.
Wow.
So it's been a big year. I'm very blessed. My wife is, I would say, my superpower. She's been the greatest gift to me in the world. And I wouldn't have expected if we'd have been sitting here a year and a half ago. Yeah. I was single. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do business-wise. I had been pastoring at Church of the Highlands, just rolled out of that and just had really no idea what I wanted to do.
So everything because you always hear like the most important decision you make is like who you marry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So obviously it sounds like you're contributing a lot of your very much so recent success to her. You'd had no plans for any of this before her, in terms of like business or anything like that.
No, I had some business plans, but definitely wasn't opposed to a relationship. I feel like I was in the space where I would say if I met the right person, I was in the space where for me, kind of the party was over. I wanted to get married. I wanted to start a family. So I was in that place, but I wasn't looking, and we kind of just stumbled on each other after a few years of meeting a few years prior back. And we met, I think, I was so excited when I met her. I was so energetic. She always refers back to those like first 2 months. And she's like, you were just like a can of Red Bull. Because I had so much vision I had just started a company. And then I think I went through a series of like maybe late 2023 where I was in one of those defining moments I'm sure you've all been in, where it was like, I had a lot of decisions to make and a lot of different routes I could go, but I didn't have a lot of hope because I didn't see a lot on the horizon. And when I met her, it was like I was so hopeful. Yeah. So I had so much vision for us. And then, like you said, I mean, I think I saw a reel yesterday, and it was like a 84-year-old billionaire, and they were like, okay, business-wise, like not anything, like we want to know business-wise, what was the smartest decision you make? What was the most pivotal decision you've ever made? And he was like, it's your spouse. They either make you and grow you into the person you need to be, or break you. And I'm sure y'all have, been known a lot about that and learned a lot from my parents about that. But so it's been a big year. And then waiting on the baby. It's we're about 3-4 weeks out. So
that's crazy.
Coming in hot.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's huge. So, I mean, there's a lot I want to unpack, but first of all, becoming a dad. I got married almost 2 years ago now.
Come on.
My wife's in grad school at Samford, so we're still putting off having kids until she finishes school.
Right.
Does it feel real yet? Like, has it set in that you are going to be a dad, or like, do you feel like a different person yet? Do you feel like everything's the same, but there's this thing coming? What's this experience been like, do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a very introspective process because it's 9 months, right? Give or take. So when we first found out she was pregnant, it was exciting. There comes in pressure. There comes in these thoughts, am I ready? Am I going to be able to be a great dad? Like, am I ready for this responsibility to literally take care of a mini human? I mean, they can't live without you for, years. And so it was definitely that moment, but it felt really far away. So we were like, okay, like, we're just going to go through this process. It's 9 months. And then I feel like as we've gotten closer, everyone asks me, they're like, are you ready? And I'm like, well, I think that's a loaded question. I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Yeah.
Like, we have the baby's room done.
Yeah.
I've, learned some of the dad things that I necessarily didn't know, that didn't know how to do, i.e. changing diapers. And, me and my wife were going through like, she was taking me through drills of like how to put in the car seat the other night. I'm like timing myself. I'm like, my life is just totally changed.
You still be at practice.
Yeah, I felt like I was at the combine.
Yeah.
It was measuring my 40 time, but it was how quick I can break the stroller down.
Yeah.
And but I think it's one of those things like, number one, you think about your parents so much as you are about to become a father, a mother. Whether you had a great experience and had great parents, or whether you weren't fortunate enough to have great parents, or maybe an absentee dad or an absentee mom, or just they maybe weren't there for you. I was fortunate enough to have great parents. I love my mom, love my dad. I owe a lot to them. So I think number one, you have such a different respect for your parents, and I bet you guys could speak to that just as you get older, as you become financially responsible for yourself, all these things. But I feel like also it's not one of those things that I can like close my eyes and mentally go to what it will feel like when my son comes into the world. I do feel like, I heard it said the other day, it's like why so many parents, especially Christians, really dive into their faith once they have children is because it's almost like this picture of how much God loves you because you realize how much you love this baby.
Yeah.
This baby's going to give you fits. It's not going to sleep. It's going to be annoying. It's going to cry. It's going to go to the bathroom on itself all day. There's going to be things that you have to do that you didn't have to do when you were single or you were married.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, when it's asleep, you're going to walk in the room and you're like, I don't care what this baby did. Mm-hmm. I love this dude so much.
Yeah.
And it gives you kind of a moment to be like, oh, that's how God loves me.
Yeah.
Like, this dude's been selfish. He flipped somebody off in 280 traffic earlier. He was mean to his wife this morning. He didn't do the things he said he was going to do. He forgot to take out the trash. And at the end of the day, like, he still loves you unconditionally, like you love that baby. So it's like this process of like, I'm also understanding how much God loves me.
Yeah.
And that's changed the way I see that
Yeah.
in a way that I don't think I would have. But to answer your question, do I know what it's going to feel like? The process has been wild. I mean, I was at lunch with a buddy who I've known for 10 years yesterday. And I'm like, I think we're still going to like hang out and be like going to lunch and like be cracking these jokes. And like, I think it's going to be the same, but it's going to be totally different.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I do know, like, once I have this son, like, I will think about him every day for the rest of my life. And there's nothing he could ever do that would make me not just be totally obsessed with him and really just want him to, have a close relationship with the Lord. And I got a good wife. So
come on,
she's gonna take care of the baby as I am, but I'm not worried there at all. She's a pediatrician's kid.
Yeah,
I got that in my back pocket. And then she just like, I think she's been doing TikTok research, just like
which is real. It's real research.
Dude, I don't have TikTok
for sure. Yeah,
and like, I mean, it's like it's almost like a Google search.
Yeah,
basically, yeah. No, literally anything you want to know.
That's how my wife is like that. She'll be like, "Did you know?" And then just like spout off this whole thing that she's never been interested in before, ever. And then now all of a sudden she like went down the TikTok rabbit hole and knows everything about this certain subject. And I'm just like, I had no idea.
Yeah, no, you can instantly become an expert on any of that. So she's using words and terms and processes I've never heard of, but I'm like, thumbs up. Yes.
You got it, babe.
When do you need me there?
Yeah.
And, so just getting prepped for that as much as I can.
What was the biggest shock? Like, what was the biggest thing you could not have foreseen through, like, obviously up until, like, the baby actually comes? What was the one thing you were like, I had no idea that this was what was a part of this process in terms
of I mean, I think having the baby, we definitely weren't the couple. My wife is 25, went to Alabama, played volleyball there. I'm a little bit older. I'm turning 29 today. So this is my birthday present.
Yeah, happy birthday. I don't know if we said that yet.
But we definitely didn't plan to just off rip have children. I think we weren't like, hey, if God blesses us with that. I think one of the biggest things for me was really like, and it's going to sound like, of course everybody thinks this, but just the blessing to be able to have children is like wild. Because I know so many friends, family that have struggled through that process of infertility. I know people that can't have kids. And a lot of times that's one of the hardest parts about people's lives. It's one of the most traumatic things. That's someone's ultimate wish is to have a child, to be able to be a father, a mother, and they can't. So like first it was like, okay, God, thank you for like letting us be able to do this. Like have a child. And all we've prayed for is health. I'm like, my son could be into Yu-Gi-Oh, want to be a guitar player, want to be a waiter at Applebee's. I don't care. Want to be in the NFL. Like, I'm going to love that dude so much.
Yeah.
I think the biggest surprise or maybe thing I didn't realize is almost like that phrase where it's like, money doesn't change you. It exposes who you already were.
Yeah.
And I think marriage is the same way. Like it definitely, you don't, and you could, I'd want to know your opinion because I think oftentimes I thought like, man, I'm going to get married and just become Captain America. Like I'm going to be the greatest husband ever. I'm going to wake up and pray for my wife for 3 hours and read a book and a podcast, jump in the ice bath. And it's like, no, like who you cultivated to become in that waiting season, and we've all heard it preached. I've preached it before. It's like the goal of singleness is not getting married. It's to become the person you want to be for that spouse, ultimately getting closer to Jesus. So that was the thing that I was like, oh, okay, I am naturally kind of selfish. Oh, okay, I can really want to just set up my schedule for myself because
aren't we all though? Isn't that like human nature to kind of be self-preserving?
Totally.
Kind of just, I want to do what I want to do. How
and like I would want to know your opinion when you're single. Not in a bad way at all. Most of the way you set up your schedule, your life, your processes is conducive to your comfort and your efficiency. Which is not a bad thing, but it totally flips on a dime. I mean, would you say that?
I talked to one of my friends about this because, so I ran a marathon a couple weeks ago for the first time.
Congrats.
And I met this random dude on mile 21, and he was from Hoover, goes to Brook Hills. He's my age. He's 24. Like all these random coincidences, and we just ran into each other on this race. And we ended up talking the last like 5 miles, which was like literally a godsend because.
Like, how did you even speak at mile 21?
I wasn't going to say that, but I was like, you mean you were talking?
We were
language,
dude. It was like I wanted to talk so bad because I just didn't want to think about the pain in my feet. That's the reality. But we were talking, and I was like, we were talking about this because he just started dating a girl, and I was saying how you always hear these old heads be like, oh, well, when you get married, then you'll see how selfish you really are. And I kind of just mocked them because I was like, dude, I am not selfish. I think of everyone before myself, which is not true. Get married and then realize how true that is and Nicholas, this guy I was running with, he was asking me like, what do you mean? Like you made fun of the old heads for saying that. Now you're saying that. Is there like an example you can give? I was like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you're saying. It's you change your schedule, you change your preferences. You say, your wife comes home, she takes her shoes off and leaves them on the ground. Well, if you love your wife, but you don't love the shoes on the ground, are you going to make the comment and ask her to pick up her shoes every time? Is that going to annoy her? Is it not? Do you want her to cook you dinner that night? Like you kind of have to choose.
Battles.
You have to pick your battles, because like you have to learn to live with this other person. They have different preferences. I do stuff that annoys my wife, just like she does things that annoy me. And part of, I think, your aims with your marriage should be to reach that equilibrium where like you're both serving each other as much as possible, and slowly over time you start to annoy each other less, Yeah. Like I think there's just those little examples where it is selfish of me to like annoy her and ask her all the time to, I don't know, pick up her shoes or whatever the example is. But I care more about, having a good conversation with her over dinner than her being frustrated with me because we got into an argument about shoes on the floor, Right. So it's those little kind of things, I think. I don't know if you had other examples or
No,
thoughts.
I think it would be opposite for me. I'm leaving my shoes on the floor, and she's like, dude, where you put something down is not where it lives.
Yeah.
Take it off the hanger, put it back on the hanger. But me and Myles, we'll go play golf, we'll go hang out. And like, there's even probably been times where I'm like, okay, babe, like, today's Saturday, like I got this golf round with some homies, and she's like, babe, I told you 5 times this week, we're going to the pumpkin patch.
Yeah.
And it's like, even learning to like,
think about others,
other
people's schedules, and
then also like, once you become a husband, it's just, nothing's about you anymore.
Yeah.
And to me, that's something I've grown into. To at first, it's like, oh, there's this discomfort. And then I've kind of grown into it. Like, I kind of love it where I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not want to go walk at the botanical gardens today. But like, let's do it. And let's walk through every greenhouse.
Yeah. And
like, the best thing I think I heard someone say is when your wife's talking to you, the best thing you could ever reply to anything she says is, and then what happened? Because it's like, I can be so, I'm doing business, I'm doing this, I want to tell her about this. And she's like, have you asked me about my day? And I'm like, well, I assumed I knew. Or, I don't know. What do you like as someone, I was single a year and a half ago, as someone who's hearing these things? Because I think there's also ways that you can start to change yourself even before you're married into, obviously, like, you're going to set up your house conducive to you. Right. But also there's other ways in which you can live that's like, okay, I got to think about others. I got to think, everything's not about me, not always my preference. Yep. I'd be interested to know kind of what you think.
Hearing you guys talk about it makes it sounds different, right? So as someone who has been on, has had to account for other people's schedules before, and then obviously not, it's just different. I think it's, I really don't even know how to put it into words, because it's not like it applies to me on a day to day. I actually haven't thought about it too much, but when I think about getting my house together, myself ready, the most important part I think would be kind of what you talked about earlier, is becoming the person that you want to be with, right? So like going to church, working out, upkeep, making sure that, when you take your shoes off, you do go put them in the closet, just to build that habit of like having that repetition, so you're just a little bit easier to get along with.
Well, I think even like something in the short-ish time we've known each other is like, I've seen you, like, I feel like you're someone who leads yourself well, which is a totally different conversation. That, like, if you don't learn spiritually and on your Christian faith, we could really go there. Yep. Because once you get out of your parents' house, you get out of that maybe Christian private school or that Bible college you went to, no one's going to be knocking on your door every morning like, hey, did you spend time in prayer?
Yeah.
Like, did you spend any time in worship? So I think when you do become married, we ain't got to talk about marriage the whole time. Just in life, one of the things I did not get till I was probably 23, and I think it held me back a little bit when I lived in New York, is I didn't really know how to self-lead. Where I was still used to people checking up on me. And it's like, if no one, hopefully you have people that do.
Of course, yeah.
But if no one does, are you doing the things you need to be doing?
Yeah.
Are you doing the things you say that you're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
That was something that took me a minute that I've had to learn. Oh, okay. I'm glad I learned that somewhat before I got married, because it's not my wife's job to lead me.
To take care of you.
To take care of me.
Yeah. So for me, I think that comes from experiences. Growing up, I very much so was responsible for myself for long periods of time. Like even in the summertime in high school, right? Like both my parents work. My dad traveled for work. So I was always having to like make sure I was fed, make sure I was where I needed to be. And then going to college away from home even amplified that. So like having bills at 18 years old that you have to like be accountable for. And then graduating college, not necessarily going right back home, and pursuing some of the things that I was looking at doing forced me to be accountable. So for instance, how I met Chase, right? We had workouts at MJP in Dallas. Nobody was coming to my door to make sure I was at workouts on time, but like, I'm trying to pursue this task or this goal. I have to be where I need to be. And then I have to make sure I get just having the discipline, I think, is like the biggest word. And that's something that I've struggled with for sure my whole life, like being disciplined and diligent on the tasks and goals that I have. But I think it's just a muscle that you just work over and over and over.
And you always hear that, coach. And I was always like, idiot, this dude, geezer. That's like, what you do now is what you're going to do later. If you cheat on this, if you do 9 reps, you're going to do that later.
And you don't know what you have until you don't have it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like I remember one of my coaches, he used to always joke with all the seniors and say, your last day and that meal card stops swiping, you're going to know what real life is like.
Yep.
And then your meal card stops swiping. You're like, oh, this is real.
There
like
we
I
go.
can actually figure out where to go get food from. Like, what do I need? How do I need it? It's but it's a process. And I think everyone's journeys with that is different. Self-discovery. And then your circumstances force you a lot of times. People don't want to jump from the nest. Yeah. They get a foot in the back and they're out of it. So 100%. They have to
jump on or get ran over.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I love marriage talk. I love what we're talking about. I do want to talk about Mr. Dylan Rizzo's business ventures. So first I want to know, I mean, where do you get the entrepreneurial what drives you to want to start a business? That's not a very common drive that I find people have. I know because I seek it out in people and it's hard to find. What do you think is in you that kind of gives you that desire to make something?
I mean, I think that's a good question. I think I would go back firstly. I had a conversation with a guy. He's about, probably 45 years old, has like 6 kids. One of his kids is more on the creative side, more than a lot of his other kids. And he's like, what can I do for him to like cultivate that? Like, do I go buy him an in-home studio? Do I not? Do I, let him go record? Do I buy him a, software where he can make beats? And I kind of thought about it and I was like, man, I feel like I should have a better answer for it. But then I was just like, I think ultimately for me, it came from watching my dad not being afraid to fail. So my dad was 26, started a church in Baton Rouge. In terms of church planning, there's a lot of ways to kind of do it to set up for success. My family kind of works in the church planning world a little bit, but like you definitely don't launch on a Wednesday night. And my dad launched on a Wednesday night doing a cappella worship with like a saxophone player. Started with 12 people. Next week there was 6. And slow burn, I'm telling you. Slowly, built a great church where they were able to help a lot of people. But I think it was watching him like, and him modeling the fact that like, hey, you can go out there and try stuff, and I think there's two sides of like, I would tell people don't listen to anybody, but also listen to everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't listen to the people that tell you you can't do it, but also listen to the people that are telling you other things, because you can learn from anyone. So I think for me, business-wise, it was like, okay, my dad started something, right? He started something that wasn't a sure win. There was probably, if he could have found any reason within him not to do it, he probably wouldn't have done it. It was like anything in life. It's a step in faith.
Yeah.
You're believing God to bless. I think for me, I didn't start doing anything business until I was like 23, 24. From the ages of like 20 to 23 in New York, like I was in a little bit of ministry, but I was also like cleaning cars. I was like basically doing Uber and chauffeuring people around and getting coffees for people. So really it was watching other people doing, and not even like them having those sit downs with me, like, let me tell you about business. Let me tell you how to raise capital and how to start a company and lead a team. It was just like catching from their everyday life, like, oh, okay, they take risks. They don't take stupid risks. They're more of an opportunist. Oh, okay, they value who they know over what they know first. And for me, my kind of developmental years when I moved back to Birmingham, I was leading in a part of this Church of the Highlands College Ministry 1. And that for me was a huge like crash course on how to manage people, how to have empathy for people. Also, I mean, in any world, especially in the church world, you're going to work with people you don't like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, how do I work with people I don't like? How do I work in a meeting where maybe I shouldn't be the loudest one in the room? I'm an Enneagram 8, so I'm a challenger. But I also, ironic, I kind of challenge the Enneagram because I'm like, whatever Enneagram, you should be able to contextualize whatever you are in any room. So if I'm an Enneagram 8, and I'm in a room with some business OGs, I should become the Enneagram to whatever it is that listens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that taught me how to build team, how to invest in people, how to go to God first, how not to place my success on the outcome, but the process. You learn that in sports. You love the process, it'll love you back. And then in terms of starting my business, I started a clothing brand first. So I had failed at that in New York. I was always kind of loved fashion. Didn't know how I would do it because I didn't study it.
Yeah.
It wasn't my background. It wasn't something that people would be like, that guy's going to be a designer. And then moved back to Birmingham. I was playing a lot of golf. And I just had this idea on the course one day. I was like, man, I should create like an Instagram page me and my homies can follow. I kind of become obsessed with that like 2000s. Everybody was wearing baggy clothes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That Carmelo LeBron draft class,
Oh, yeah.
Tiger Woods, all that. And I was like, okay, mixing that with sports, especially golf, it's like, I'm going to create this little Instagram page called Baggy Pants Golf. And I'm going to post like mood board pictures. Gained a little bit of a following out of nowhere. And one day I sent my boy, I was like, hey, I want to do like some hats to say like baggy on them. Me and a few homies, I'll give them to my family. And it'd be a little cool thing that I can kind of exercise that creative muscle.
Yeah.
And he sent me back a hat and then like a hoodie and a tee. And it was like in that moment, like I haven't had many of those like light bulb moments like people. It was in that moment I was like, I'm turning this into a full-fledged clothing brand, and it doesn't make sense. There wasn't a lot of the golf streetwear world is really
just now kind of
It's coming.
is
yeah.
grown. You guys
Yeah.
probably know Malbon, Metal, all these brands that kind of
Yeah.
trailblazed. But back when I started, it was just a few of those guys, and I kind of always took it like I didn't want to be a golf brand. I wanted to be like a golf-inspired brand.
Yeah.
Almost like a, and in no way am I on this level, but just as a adjacent, you know, like relator is like a Supreme to skate. Like
Yeah.
they don't just make skateboards and bearings and knee pads. everything's just inspired by skate culture.
Right.
So for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to do this like streetwear lifestyle, clothes that I would wear brand. Launched that, thought a few people would buy it. Was trying to take it real quick, slowed it down. Did a first initial launch. It was kind of a case study. It went really well. And then I was like, oh my God, I have to learn how to like manage a small business. It's like, this is now something.
Yeah.
And it was like, it wasn't the thing that I had prepared, done R&D, done studying for. It just came out of nowhere. And it was like, in that moment, I was just like, okay, yes, I'm doing this. And I have no idea about anything business-wise, but I'm going to figure it out as I go. And I'm going to fail a lot and have a lot of pain, but I'm not going to quit. Mm-hmm. And that was like my first business. And I did that while I was a part of the church staff. And then that got me into kind of more of the clothing side. You work with these printers when you have a clothing brand. So, you know, if I had a logo on this shirt, you get the blank or you get it made, you know, overseas, and then they put the logo on it. Yeah. I was working with all these printers, hated working with them. It was hard to get in touch with them. They had awful websites. And I was like, man, if I could do a better job than them at this, which I think I can, then like, that's really kind of where the money's at, because I'm spending so much of my money getting this stuff produced.
Yeah.
So then that kind of crazy golf-inspired thing that people are like, what are you doing? And I didn't even think a lot of times. I thought the name was lame when I first created it. That led me into the business now that I run just from learning the printer side of things. So launched that in about 13 months ago.
Okay.
And we work with, it's a creative company, creative studio, where we work with a lot of brands, a lot of churches. Just naturally, my background growing up in it is ministry, mission-minded things. We even kind of have a pillar of our company where we give back a portion of the end-of-year profit revenue and back into charitable things and, philanthropic different charities. But that was how we started that, and we work with a lot of nonprofits, churches, but I've worked with Guthrie's, and I just did some St. Patrick's Day tees for walk-on. So we don't box ourselves into all of that. Yeah. It's just like, hey, we do have a little bit of a missional side to what we do. We're definitely not working with any company that would totally disalign with that. Yeah. But we'll work with anybody. And then I've got into some other clothing companies and started a few other things. But I was the least likely dude to become a business guy. I didn't do good in high school. I dropped out of college and I didn't study business. I was an assistant for 4 years, cleaning cars, getting coffee. But I was around a lot of smart people that I tried to learn from. So I was the least likely dude. And I still feel like half the time, like, what am I doing? I mean, I was leaving the office today. I spilled coffee all over my computer. I'm like, I don't know nothing about business. I'm still learning how to manage all this. But that's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah. I think something you said that was instrumental, I think a lot of people overlook two things. One, the fact that you were humble enough to do what it took to be around the people that you needed to be around. I think a lot of people have this image in their head of, oh, I'm too good to go clean someone's car. I'm too good to go get coffee. But you don't realize you going to go get coffee is your ticket into the room that really, no disrespect to you or anything like that, but like, it's not like you're necessarily providing value in that room other than doing what was asked of you to get into that room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think a lot of people forget that part, especially on the way up.
Yeah.
And then two, you are who you hang around. So like being around smart people, inherently you become smarter.
Yeah.
You know, so like it doesn't surprise me at all hearing your story that this is where you're at now. Like not even a little bit.
When I was the opposite, like I hung around idiots for so long, and I would be doing, I would love them, but like things that are just not smart life-wise, not smart lifestyle-wise. I was wanting results in life that I was putting into life, the things that would not get those results.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I wanted the success, but I wasn't putting in the work. I wanted the lifestyle, but I was hanging out with people who were living the wrong lifestyle. So yeah, I mean, like, wasn't necessarily like the guy in the room, but I think if you can't be the guy who's the furthest from the guy, who's assisting the guy, you'll never be the guy. And in those moments, I did, like, I'm sure we've all had moments of where we were the lowest on the totem pole.
Correct.
There's still some rooms that I'm in, and I kind of like it being the lowest on the totem pole, not the smartest. But in those seasons in New York, I did take getting those coffees, cleaning those cars, getting to places on time. I did take that very seriously. Almost where people would be like, dude, why do you have a fanny pack with like all these things in it? I'm like, because I'm prepared. Like, if my boss is
ready to rock,
like, I'm ready to rock. So I took it seriously because it's like sports. You want to be good.
Yeah.
In
anything you do, my dad used to always tell me, Myles, I don't care what you do, be the best at it.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what you do, be the best. And just take the time and be disciplined enough to do what it takes to be the best at whatever it is you do, whether you're washing cars or picking up coffee. Like,
agreed.
Get it right, do it well.
So one thing we talk about a lot here is, so me and Steven are both into fashion and into coffee and into a lot of things like that, a place like New York is very conducive to having the best versions of, if that makes sense. And, you know, with starting our podcast or doing different things, different ventures, a lot of times it feels like we should move to the big city to really get around the right people. And it seems like in the bigger places, it's easier in the sense that people appreciate people who are going out and doing their own thing and doing the creative endeavor. But you left the big city, came back to Birmingham, and chose Birmingham as the place to do the creative endeavor. And part of our goal with this podcast is to highlight people who do that because, I mean, not to be rude, but we kind of feel like people don't celebrate that enough here. I think people don't celebrate the guy going out and doing the hard thing and making the creative endeavor in Birmingham as much as they should. So that's part of our goal. What was that decision-making process like for you? Did you ever think about starting something up in New York? Did you try and start something up in New York, or did you only get the idea for like baggy pants and some of this other stuff since you got back?
Yeah, no, I mean, these are great questions. You're good at asking questions.
Thanks.
I will say that. I think the podcast is going to go a long way. And I love that aspect of, like, I think there's so much hate and everybody wants to point out what's wrong about people or what they're doing wrong in their business or just hate in general. And I love the idea of, like, in 2025, let's celebrate people more. Yeah. I always think about, like, not to go on a tangent, but like they talk about the friend that's reliable that you can call when you're in a bad situation. And I'm like, okay, I want to be that friend. You know what the friend I really want to be is? The dude who somebody can call when something incredible happens in their life and they can celebrate with.
Yeah.
Because we've all probably been in situations where you've called a homie like, bro, this just happened to me, this crazy opportunity I've always wanted. And they're like, yeah, but you know, like usually it don't work out.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Immediate devil's advocate. Immediate.
Debbie Downer it. So I love that idea of celebrating. I think Birmingham's cool. There's a lot of awesome people doing amazing things in so many industries. For me, New York was a learning season. It was a grind season. It was in the trenches. It's like sports. You practice is harder than the games. So you don't, so you go so hard in practice and get to such a point that you want to quit, where in the games, it becomes easy, if you will.
Yeah.
For me, that was New York. I was in the trenches. There were so many times I wanted to quit that I would be walking through New York at 1 a.m. getting yelled at by a homeless dude, and then there's a preacher on the corner, and then there's telling everybody he's going to hell, actually. And I'm like, well, maybe. This is a crazy scene. And then, there's a billionaire right on the corner, and then, there's a model, and there's so many different people. So I would say there was a level of inspiration in cities like that that I do sometimes miss.
Yeah.
Because you walk out your building, you walk out your apartment, you walk out the subway, and it's like everybody is trying to do something great and trying to be something great. Also, everything's a grind in New York. Taking out your trash is a grind. You got to walk down 8 stairs. Going to the subway. I was the Southern dude, and I moved, and I'm like letting people on the subway in front of me, getting 20 minutes late to events and appointments. And it's like, it can kind of turn you into a hustle bustle a little bit, like where you're just too hardcore. And I had to manage that a little bit. But I think in terms of that was like my college, if you will. That was where I learned. That was where I struggled. And I think so many times I wanted to get, like, if you will, the storm. There was epic parts about New York, and I would go back and do the same thing. I met incredible people, worked with awesome people, learned. But, like, a lot of it was storms. I was alone in New York at 2021 trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Didn't know how to self-lead, was still struggling with some things that I needed to put down. And it was like so many times I wanted to get out of the storm, if you will. And now I look back and I'm like, I'm glad that I didn't get out of it because I learned so many things during the storm.
Yeah.
Like so many times I wanted deliverance like from something, and it was like God was like, no, I'll give you endurance through.
Yeah.
So that was my process in New York. And then I got back, and the thing I think that you spoke to is like, man, we're doing this podcast. We're interviewing cool people. Like, we're stepping out in faith. Like, this isn't a common thing that's happening in Birmingham, that, like, me and you don't know each other. We could be very similar. We could be very different. We could have very different thoughts on a lot of things. But I think it's always cool to have diversity of thought and have moments like this where we've all come from different backgrounds. But I think the cool thing about, like, there is a level of, like, okay, in New York, like, I tried to start a brand, failed, didn't think it through, still got the old mock-ups. Like, it's a special thing to me now. But also moving back here, it's like, man, there's really not a lot of people doing fashion brands. So there's also the pro of, like, wow, everyone's doing up there and there's inspiration and, like, things going on. At the same time, like, instead of being one of 100, you can be one of 10 here.
Yeah.
And I love Birmingham. I kind of want to gatekeep it like the rest of the world. I'm like, this is like our little oasis. I love it. I wanted to move back to New York a few times, thought like, what did you do moving back to Birmingham? And I love the city. And I think I was so inspired there, but I have a friend, he made like these viral tees, and it was this phrase, I can see God in anything. I can see God in everything. And shout out to Micah. He's one of my good friends. But I think I've tried to apply that anywhere I've lived, anywhere I've gone. Like, I can see God in going to the coffee shop, whether that's him inspiring me, him speaking to me, or I can see God and see beauty when I'm looking at Central Park, or like from this conversation today, like taking in things from you guys and, getting into cool topics. So New York was my playground. New York was my kind of my trench boot camp season. And then when I got here, I was like, man, if you got through that, like, you could do something cool here. And I like being, there's a part of like, yeah, there's not a lot of people doing fashion and starting brands and stuff, but like, it's cool to meet people who are, and maybe be someone that potentially could relate to someone where it's like, yeah, I remember I wanted to start a brand, and like now I'm here, and maybe I could encourage you a little bit in your journey.
That's a big thing between, like, you're talking about New York being one of 100, or being 1 in 10 here. I think we talked about it you and Steven talked about the coffee shop he used to work at in Raleigh. Yeah. And how, like, sometimes you take an idea from a bigger city and then come to a smaller city and then apply that same topic and it catch on and hit, just because no one's tried to, run that play here, for lack of a better word. And so that makes perfect sense. And, I think the niche that you're in is like perfect timing. Obviously divine timing, how it started and everything like that. Malbon, metal, baggy, like and creating that vertical within it, you know, going from just a clothing brand to realizing, okay, like this is where I spend most of my money, recognizing need, being what you said before, an opportunist. From that opportunity, taking it vertical and scaling that way, it's impressive.
Thank you.
Very.
Well, and everything like it, in today's world, like you go on TikTok, you go on Instagram Reels, there's an idealistic way of doing every single thing in life.
Yeah.
This is actually how you should brush your teeth. This is what you should do. There's actually this time when you should wake up. There's an ideal thing. And it's like, no, not really. Because like, yes, I am technically CEO of 4 companies. Man, we had a slow month in January with one of my companies. That was real tough. I had to let go of a dude who was a homie of mine, who I really believed in. Like, still, like, I'm still totally in the grind season. I've seen some success, but, like, you know, like, everyone, Instagram's a highlight reel. A lot of all that you see the end result where it's either a facade and some things are still a struggle, or you see people really killing it and you don't know the 10 years that they went through of pain and grinding and learning to get to that point.
Where do you take inspiration from when it comes to leadership? You just talked about having to let a close friend go, which is tough. And I know a lot of people would struggle with doing something like that. And obviously being the CEO of 4 different companies, A, how do you balance your time? And then B, like, where do you take, you know, that leadership? Where do you see that? Where does that come from? I guess your leadership style, and how's it changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think leadership wise, like I've learned just as much from people what not to do as what to do. So I've seen people in high leadership positions treat people really poorly, and that taught me just as much. To know, man, I never want to make people feel like that. I never want to be somebody who belittles people. But I could say, Alex Hormozy and, like all these guys, like, yes, I learned from them for sure. David Goggins, like savage, like dude transformed his life, all these things. I learned from people like my grandfather who like goes and lives a life that is selfless and is 50 years old, he's 79 and cuts his neighbor's grass and goes and checks on their kids and goes to his neighbor's kids' basketball games. I learned things from my dad, like watching my dad be generous, watching my dad bless the dude who drops off the UPS packages. Just as much as like I was watching a Virgil Abloh podcast the other day, and you take so much from a guy like that where you're like, we don't actually even speak the same language. You use different vocabulary that I want to get Rosetta Stone to learn. Yeah. But I mean, you learn how to have hard conversations through failing at them. I've tried to have hard conversations and left it, and I'm like, I think he thinks I just gave him a raise.
Oops.
And I tried to let him go. But also like knowing like in any hard conversation, you can, it's what the Bible says, truth and love. Like it's you can have a hard conversation, but at the end of it, make it be encouraging. Like you have an employee that's like really struggling, and it's like, hey, here's what I need, here's what I'm seeing, and here's what I need to change. But knowing you're going to crush this and you're going to be so much better on the other side of it. And I believe in you and I know you're going to do it. But I learned from I learned from like the dude who's my next door neighbor, whose wife had dementia, severe Alzheimer's, like in that dynamic, had a home nurse since we've lived in our neighborhood, which has been about 2.5 years. And just lost his wife 3 months ago. And still, wakes up, takes his trash out, waves at me every day. We'll go over and bring him some food sometimes. I'll go have a conversation with him. And, I learned from guys like that how to persevere, how to keep going. So as much as I learned from like the guys who do leadership for a living, I think about like my pastor, Pastor Chris Hodges. I've watched him on stage speak a lot and give some really all-time messages, but I've also like watched him be there for me at like a really low time where it's like, I never want to be the guy who's too big to pick up the phone. I never want to be the guy who's focused on winning in business, but I'm losing in my family. My whole goal in 2025 is like, I want to be a better son. I want to be a better brother. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better friend. And like all the other business stuff, like it's auxiliary. It's great. I want to take care of my family and make a living. But like, I want people to, I want my employees to not say, that dude's he's an alpha leader. I want them to be like, nah, he's kind and like believes in me and like lives a life that could, you know, could be an example to us. So I've really simplified my life the older I've gotten. And I take things from guys like you, and I'll take things from this conversation of, man, he asked that question really well. Man, he listened really well. Like Myles doesn't listen to just respond. So I learn things in any conversation. Yeah. I try to, at least, and I'm not always like that, but
it's a good word. I like that. Tell me about your relationship with money, because that's something I wrestled with for a while that I'm still kind of working through. I grew up in Mississippi, outside of Jackson, Mississippi, in like a middle class, average life. My parents did a lot to provide for me, and I had a great life growing up. But everyone I grew up around was kind of blue collar. We work hard for our money kind of people. And I've always dreamed of running my own business, and I really like cars, so I want to drive a Porsche. Like, well, if you want to drive a Porsche, you got to make a lot of money so you can justify that big spend, bud, you know? And so it took me a long time just to admit to myself, like, I do want to make a lot of money, and that's not a bad thing. To me, I was indoctrinated, not necessarily by my parents, but by people around me, that like, if you want to make a lot of money, that's the interpretation of the love of money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. I think that money is a tool to be used, and it can be idolized just like anything else. But for you, obviously making money is necessary to live and provide for your family and things like that. But as a business owner, a lot of times people start businesses because they want to make more money than the average person working a job. What has your relationship with money been like, and how has that changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's essential. Like I'm definitely learning. Babies are expensive. Wives are expensive.
Yeah.
My wife is she was on the math team. She did like perfect score on the ACT, like opposite of me. She's got me on this marriage budget too. So she's like, your $500 a month in DoorDash is over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I love now. So she keeps me on a tight budget. But we do have those Target runs where she likes to have a little fun, and babies are expensive too. So yes, money is essential. I think that's something that people are kind of, like you said, in the church and life, it's like, no, well, if you're chasing money, like you're chasing the wrong thing. And it's like, well, that's relative, because chasing money, someone could be chasing money so they can be generous one day.
Yeah.
Someone could be chasing money so they can help someone else start a business. I think for me, I've watched my dad's love language, if you will, is generosity. So my dad's the most generous dude I've ever met. With no strings attached, not the guy who's trying to, buy people's loyalty and any false motives. So I've watched him do that. His whole life is be generous. And I think, I truly think like the more you give, the more you'll get. And I've always had this thought, I'm sure people have studied deep into this and talked about this in church, and I keep going back to faith because that's, just a part of me. But I think God blesses people who, I think God gives money and blesses people who have the eyes to see that who have the eyes to see the people that need to be blessed. So like, I think God will bless people that have his eyes to see others. So I think, if you're out here just trying to get money, you want to, get cars, buy a big house, save it all for yourself and flex it. Like, you might, like, that's definitely attainable. I know a lot of people that do, but you're probably alone at your crib. Like, what's a big house when you're the only one in it? What's driving a cool car when it's just you? Yeah. So I think for me, yes, money is essential for sure. One of the things about Baggy, like, it's been a very profitable business for me. It's been cool. But I didn't start it for money at all.
I was going to say a mood board is not usually
a
cash cow.
Yeah. And honestly, if I would have thought into it, I would have named it something different. I probably would have created like a Christian brand because I'm like, there's an easier market. This is like my people.
Yeah.
But it's been profitable, but I didn't start it for the money. And all the dudes that I know that I look up to business-wise are also some of the most generous people in the world.
Yeah.
So I've always, like, when I've talked to my wife about, me and two buddies started this new company called Tour Caddy, and it's this like golf tech. It's basically like a automatic golf ball dispenser.
Yeah.
So if you'd be on the range, it's like a little golf bag that has a motion censored tooling that it rolls
Spits
the
out a
ball out
ball.
of. Yes. And
similar to like a Top Golf.
It's like a Top Golf technology, but in a little bag. So for people with simulators, and you start something, you kind of think it's a good idea, right? You're like, I had the idea. I think God's given me the idea. He's called me to this. But you're also looking for market validation, right? In anything. You're like, do other people think this is a good idea? Am I biased? And just me and my family and my grandma thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
So we launched this thing, went to the PGA show in January, and like, it's totally blown us away with the reception of it, but also like we've done really well financially off it, like way more than we would have ever thought. And it's looking like this could be like a really cool thing that is able to set my family and my co-founders up for a long time. But like my whole goal, and I can get away from that. I have to remind myself every day I wake up, like I can do something, close a deal, and immediately go, hold up, wait a minute. Y'all thought I was like, I can immediately go, I'm that guy. Yeah. I have to wake up every day and be like, dude, none of this is me. I don't deserve any of this. So I try to like, the more success, the more money, if you will, the more, assets I attain, is like, I want to be able to give more. I want to be someone who's thought as generous, because I think, everybody loves a generous person, and it's kind of like when you honor someone, it's like it's for them, but it's really for you to like put your heart in the right place, where it's like, I'm not that guy. I think generosity is the same thing. Like you want to help somebody, but it also reminds you like, oh, like it ain't all about me. Like really it's about blessing other people. So I'm hoping to do really well, and then like me and my wife start something that can help people, and start a charity, or become in the philanthropic world. And so I think the older I get, the more I'm like, I want to be generous. I want to be someone who sees others, who is a noticer. But in terms of money, like I definitely also see it as like, you need to be smart. The older I get, the more I'm like, I need to save. And I've done some things in life where, in business, where I've jumped on things. Like anything just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And that's a lesson I learned, where I'm like, oh, this business right here could make me a good bit of money. And I started, and it does, but like it cost me my sanity in the process. And now I'm doing too many things where I come home all the time and I'm like, babe, I got this new idea. And she's like, no, we're going to focus on your 4 things right now. So, I mean, I don't know. What would you say about that? Like in business, becoming married, like how do you think about that? And how do you keep yourself in check, as all of us who are dudes who have high ambitions?
Something you said a second ago, and it just sparks my thoughts on this. Have you seen House of David on Amazon?
No, tell me about it.
So it depicts David versus Goliath, and it's Amazon put a show together, blase, blase. But in it, it depicts King Saul being stripped of his kingdom, and it was because he started to put himself, as Samuel said in the show, eye to eye with God, and forgetting, no, God made you king. He appointed you to do the things that you're attaining currently. He put you in that position, and he just, long story short, he forgot how he got to where he was. And so having that realization every day of, yeah, I could pop it like I'm doing the things that I'm doing, when in reality it's just you being led by God.
Yeah,
he ordered your steps to take you where you're going. So
yeah,
well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, it's something I'm still wrestling through. I work a job. I don't run a business yet. I think part of that is very practically, my wife is in grad school, and I don't want to take that risk of our whole financial income while we have nothing else to fall back on, basically. So I'm waiting until she's working before I take the risk, at least. The other thing is I don't necessarily see an opportunity right in front of me that I think I have to jump on. And I want to be wise about what things I do jump on, you know. There are some different irons in the fire that we're thinking about, but nothing yet to fully jump on. But another thing is I just want to spend this time like learning, both from people online and reading books and whatnot, and also from people I meet, which selfishly is a little bit part of why I started this. Was I get to meet people like you and ask you questions when I maybe otherwise wouldn't have ever met you before, because I don't know if I would have sat down and interviewed Myles, and then now you're here. So anyway, I also wanted to ask about the dream. What is the dream for Dylan Rizzo? Let's say you're 45, 50 years old. We're a few years in the future. What are you doing? What are you spending your time doing?
Man, I mean, I think if you'd asked me that maybe a few years ago, a year ago, I would have probably had a different answer. It would probably be, around what I would be doing. I think my dream would be more about who I can become. And that sounds like, man, this guy, Jalen Hurts press conference, like just rehearse this. Like
one-liners.
They wrote me, I didn't write them back. But I think I want Vision, my printing company. I want it to be a very large printing company that is very lucrative and very successful, and more than anything, we are somehow able to make a huge impact in communities, in people who are less fortunate, who need it. In terms of, Baggy and this other brand, Circle Author, like I want it to be in every retailer that makes sense across America. Like there are these measurable goals that I have for sure. Like with Tour Caddy, I want to build it for a few years, and I want to become one of the biggest golf companies I want to sit with TaylorMade. I want to sit with Titleist. I want to sit with Bad Birdie, these companies. But if not, I really want to become a great husband. I think at the end, I came to this point where it was like, I was maybe 2-3 years ago, probably even actually like 2021. And it was like, what do I want to be the guy who's like in Ibiza at 30 and it's like 5 a.m. and I'm like, I should have started a family, Yeah. Or like, do I want to be the guy that like I'm sitting around the table at 60 years old with kids who love God, who love me, who love my wife, that have kids. So I think it's family for me, man. It's like sitting around with all my grandkids running around and my kids and me and my wife still growing to love each other and finding out new things about each other. It's connecting with new people. I think every every year I connect with. I didn't know Myles a year ago, like
6 months ago.
we just met. Like there's when I think about 10 years ago, there's a lot of people I'm not doing life with. Probably very few. I don't talk to one person from high school, not for any other reason. We just went different paths and all these things. So it's like, I want to become a man who lives a life of integrity, and I'm on that journey. I want to become a man who does what I say I'm going to do. I'm on that journey. I want to be someone who is kind. One thing I'm learning in 2025 is just to relax. I'm always wanting to do something, go somewhere. Night has to end high. We got to go somewhere. I got to be texting, working on something. It's like, relax. I want to be someone who listens more than I speak. I want to be someone who can learn in every situation. And I want to be someone who can hopefully, I always think about people who like, maybe you think about people who kind of got handouts their whole life. And I'm like, yeah, there's a pro to that, but also there's a huge con to that because you can never relate to anyone. So like, I don't hope I go through a lot of hard times, but I know life has a way of touching everyone. And I hope that I'm able to endure the hard times and become stronger. So at the end of my life, I can sit down with a married couple and be like, no, like me and my wife walked through something really tough as well. Yeah. With our children, with our own marriage, with our disagreements, our differences. And guess what? We were able to do this, this, and this. I want to be someone who can talk to business leaders and be like, I didn't go to college. I didn't study. Like I want people that ever find me online or meet me from high school to, I don't want it to make sense where I'm at. I want it to be like, what on earth is that guy doing? It could only be God. Yeah. So I think the dream for me is keep building great relationships. I want to be a dad. I want to be a great dad. I want to be invested in my son's life. I want to go to his pickup, go to his little league games and his middle school basketball games. I want to be there for him. I want to live a life that is an example to him. When I think about being a dad, I really don't remember a lot of the stuff my dad told me. I remember a lot of the stuff he did. Yeah. And, there's a lot of times I don't want to take the trash out in the 8 million boxes that we got from our baby registry out to the street on Wednesday night. But I watched my dad do it his whole life. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of the guy I want to be. And I having a kid, you got a 24/7 parole officer. They watch your every move. Yeah. So it's like, I want to be someone that my son can say, man, I want to be like my dad, which that's an ever-growing process. I wouldn't say I'm there yet. I have a lot of areas to grow. But the dream, have a big family, still be married, still love the Lord, have long-standing relationships, have businesses that are doing well, and also being able to invest in other people's dreams, because I've had people who have believed in me more than I believed in myself, and I want to be a guy who can do that to the younger generation, people around me.
Yeah, that's huge. Are you familiar with the term imposter syndrome?
Yeah. I just learned a little bit more about that.
Okay. So that's another topic of conversation we've hit on a lot is, for listeners who might not know, imposter syndrome is like the idea that you get to the point where you're doing something that's really cool that you maybe always wanted to, but you feel like you are almost outside of yourself. It's like you don't deserve to be here because you're just some little, kid from Mississippi or whatever it is. Have you wrestled with imposter syndrome in your endeavors?
Yeah, I mean, me and my wife have talked about that because I never really understood. I had heard it so much, but I never looked into it to understood what it meant. And it's just like you said, where you're in situations and you're like, I'm not qualified to be here. I don't fit in here. I'm not as smart as all these people. I would say if you're doing anything substantial, anything successful, and you don't have that once in a while, you may be an imposter.
That's a good word.
So, yes, I mean, I found myself on a call the other day. I came home and told my wife, I was like, you know me, like, I forget the oven's on and I leave the heat on all day. And like, I'm in these conversations with these venture capitalists and they're trying to invest in the thing that I'm building. It's like this introspective moments in life that I'm sure we've all been in, where you're in these conversations where you're like, man, I'm not qualified. These guys may think something. You can almost, in an unhealthy way, you can become to think you're a fraud.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh no, I'm a fraud. I'm a fake. I'm not as good at. In a healthy way, I think it's a humility thing.
Yeah.
I think it brings you back to the fact that like, no, like I'm not the guy. I'm not the smartest guy in every room. I think, I think like you always talk about like in church, it's like, you know, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And I think in anything, I've tried to do this, and I learned this from a close relationship of mine for a long time who did this really well. And he wrote a book about it, and he lived a life that really lived this idea of owning any space you're in. So like today, you this past week, whatever, it's like, yo, I want you to hop on this podcast. These dudes have this cool thing going. They've had on interesting people. Immediately, what's the thought in my mind? Why do they want to have me on? I'm not like a dude who's on a lot of podcasts. Like, I'm not super interesting. I don't think I'm that interesting. I don't have all the answers. I probably really want to get on here and hear their thoughts. So yeah, that happens to anybody. Insecurities always come in, but I've always thought like, man, I got to own the moment. And like, there's an actor, he's in the White Lotus right now. He was in, I wouldn't endorse these shows to everyone, but like, you seen Vice Principals?
No.
You seen, Righteous Gemstones?
I've seen White Lotus.
Okay. It's the dude, he kind of has the Southern accent. I don't know.
I'm really bad at actor
But
names.
it was another actor he was talking to, and he was like, hey, do you get nervous? And the guy was like, yeah, I get nervous. And he was like, well, how do you deal with it? He's like, but I never once doubt that I am the man for this job. And I had to learn that when I came back to Highland, when I came back to Birmingham. And I got in this situation where another guy was doing something else, and I immediately got thrown into leading this college ministry at 22. Kids are the same age as me. I'm immediately in imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Also, my dad's great at the thing I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So like, Myles, you could totally speak to that. When you choose the career that your dad's very good at, it is a very everyday, reflective, like, oh my gosh, I have to be mega secure because I'm going to fight it so hard. And it was like, man, we'd be at Iron City. I'd be the only staff member there. There'd be 600 people, smart people in the room. I'm talking like people that go to Redeemer, like people who really know the Bible, like Sanford, all these places. And like, I'm having to come up there and bring an original thought up when I didn't go to Bible school. I don't claim to know. I'm not a theologian. I'm not like in hermeneutics. Like I can just extort everything, every verse by verse. And I'm having to go up there and bring an original thought to already people who are intellectual and smart people. And I had to just go, you know what? Like bang on your chest a little bit and like own the moment, like walk into it. And I think there's probably when you're in rooms having that imposter syndrome, the way I think about it is, or probably a lot of other people, it's probably a mix of us that all kind of have it. And like I said, if you don't, like, I think that's a slippery slope. Speaking to that, like going into athletics, like, your dad, all-time great at Bama, like was it Michael's draft class?
No, he's after that.
Well, but like in that era, huge recruit, like speaking in terms of Tuscaloosa, really in the basketball world, known by everybody, legend. You go into, I'm going to be a competitive athlete. I'm also pretty good at it, but your measurement is not your dad who played high school JV basketball. Your measurement is the dude who was incredible at it.
Yeah.
How have you faced that?
Head on. And I think it takes time, right? So you have this idea, especially growing up, you hear, first of all, my dad's a very imposing individual, like 6 feet, 8 inches. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
big guy
next to each other.
Because like, you're not at all.
Right.
It's funny. I was talking to one of my coworkers. I'll get back to your question. I was talking to one of my coworkers yesterday, and like my whole life growing up, I thought I was a very small person. My uncle's like a legit 6'4". My dad's 6'8". My roommate when I got to college was 6'6", 350. Like one of my other roommates was 6'7", 320. Like I'm walking around athletes, and I'm like, dang, like you got the basketball team on campus. I'm kind of a small guy, you know what I mean? And then you get into regular life, and it's a different story. But to answer your question, I think it takes like a level of confidence that only comes through achievement. And that sounds extremely arrogant to say, but what I mean by that is you have to do something to prove to yourself that you can do it. You know what I mean?
Like, you got to have wins.
Right. And it doesn't have to be some astronomical, 5-star All-American, but like I made varsity. Okay, cool. Like, all right, I kind of can do this. I kind of belong. Okay, I got my first scholarship. Oh, okay. Like, all right, it's not Bama, but like we're on the right track here. And then, you get to college and then you face adversity and then you get on the field and make your first tackle. And like, your mom sends you the clip of you making your first tackle on national television. It's like the small wins kind of add up and then it kind of builds that self-belief. Like, all right, I can do some things. And then you talk about getting into rooms where you're not really sure how you got there or if you belong there. But then something I learned probably just through different jobs and sales and life, no one really knows what you don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, until you open your mouth probably, and then
you can give it away.
Right. But conviction and confidence can take you a long way.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's just kind of building that muscle of like doing things enough to know that you can, and then also putting yourself in position to fail and then getting back up and trying it again. Yeah.
My buddy Heath Paget, he's come on the podcast before. He's in a totally different field. He's in orthodontist school, so he's really, really, really smart. But
shout out Heath.
Yeah, shout out Heath. But he talks about that. He calls it building momentum. You build on your last wins, and you take the little ones bit by bit, but they build. And like you're saying, over time, that builds your confidence. And sure, you still lose. You still fail every now and then. But like, look back, remember what you've done. Like, you're not nobody. It's not that you have no experience all of a sudden just because you like lost the last game or whatever. You still have all these years of playing, all these years of practice. Right. Get back up, keep going.
I think it's Hermosi that talked about building enough wins to build the credibility within yourself to like have that belief.
Yeah, he always says outwork your own self-doubt or whatever.
Yeah, I think success is, I sometimes viewed it as like a straight incline that's like not a hard incline. Like you just kind of walk up it and it's just success. And then I'm like, oh, it's a staircase. You kind of go down a floor every now and again, but like it's like boom, boom. Okay, I plateau. But I learned that. I failed there. I also got that win. So like I have the confidence. And then every super uber successful dude I know almost has a delusional sense of self-confidence. Not in a narcissistic way, but like it's like I keep referring to Virgil, R.I.P., like this dude who just pioneered for a lot of people who even in the art world were marginalized or just he was a creative that thought deeper than just like the art itself, the process. But he always talked about the people that set themselves apart business and idea and art and business wise are like, if us three are at a bonfire and we're hanging out, let's say we're at a dinner, we're at East West having a good time. We come up with an idea like, yo, that would crush. Like, we should go do the podcast, but take it on the road. Like, that would be sick, man. Interview cool people, whatever. Let's do it.
On the way.
And then, but he talks about everyone has these conversations late at night. Everyone has these moments of, maybe somebody's had a few glasses of wine. They're like, we should do this. The real winners are the people that wake up in the morning and go, hey, so I made a plan. I made an outline. You need to do this. This is what we need to do. And that's been someone I've tried to be, and I fight all the time, is like, man, I have this idea. I don't need to wake up in the morning and be like, that was spur of the moment. I actually shouldn't do that. I need to be like, okay, let's go make a plan, try it. And if it fails, sick.
You try it.
Yeah.
My mom, her favorite word is execute. That is like, when you ask her anything, when you talk to her about something, execute.
Yeah.
Like, it literally could be these, make a list of the things you need to get from the grocery store. Like, all right, did you execute it?
Yeah.
Like, and it's.
I love that.
Yeah. Make a list in anything.
Yeah. It's funny enough. Everyone talks about like my dad all the time. I really think I take a lot from my mom also. Like, incredibly smart. She's from right up the road, like right out small town outside of Tuscaloosa. And like, you want to talk about like an executor though, like to a T, task done. And I do not live up to it majority of the time, but like, it's something to aspire to. Just,
oh yeah.
Like, knocking things off the list.
What would you say, like, in terms of this? And I know we got, time constraints, whatever, but like starting the podcast, like, I'm sure that was a concept at one point. That was an idea that could have felt really far away. What was it like to be like, no, we're going to set up a studio. We're going to do a first part. We're going to ask people to come on. The most vulnerable thing you could do is like speak and present your words and your thoughts to the world. What was that like?
I mean, this was literally started as a practice of just executing. So we were sitting around over a year ago now, fall of 23, and we talk about starting cafes, and we talk about starting clothing brands, and all these different business ideas, and we talk about moving to other cities just to live in the other city and do the cool thing there, whatever it is. And so one day Steven and I were talking about we should start a podcast, and I was like, look, we always talk about doing stuff. We should just like actually do one of the ideas that we come up with. And a podcast is pretty low lift. I mean, we tried to record on my MacBook through GarageBand. That didn't work well. So we bought this like $300 soundboard, borrowed some mics, set up shop in Steven's living room in his house in Crestwood, had like our best friends on, and then just recorded a podcast. It got a few hundred views, and we were like, whoa, hang on. Like, that seems like
right.
A few hundred people listen to us just talk to our friends for an hour and a half. I mean, I guess that's some kind of confirmation. Like, let's just keep doing it.
Validation.
And our main thing was we wanted to commit to putting out an episode a week. So there's all these things we can do to make it be better. We can raise production value. We can, set up a new studio space. Obviously now we have like our own space to record and all this, but our main thing was let's just be consistent and then iterate over time, because we want to be doers. We don't want to just talk about this thing. So we've been putting out episodes. This will be probably episode 50. It might be 52, actually. It might be our 52nd episode. But, it was an exercise in just doing it. And if it all comes crashing down, a year from now, that's okay, because I've had so many cool conversations and met cool people, and I'll have it all recorded, and I can go back and listen to it whenever I want. But it's really opened up some doors to meeting cool people and doing cool things. We've interviewed artists and gone to shows that they performed at, and interviewed people like you, and now I have some cool hats, and there's all these kind of doors that just keep opening up, and we kind of just keep saying yes and keep putting out episodes every week, and it's been really fun.
In the spirit of hats, I hope you guys can see the two baggy hats right here. You guys just dropped today.
I did. We did a little
where can they
collection.
find?
You can go on the site, baggypantsgolf.com.
Okay.
Yep. Use code baggy10 10% off discount.
Okay, plug.
I'll keep it live. So whenever this airs, we'll keep it live. But yeah, I need to put Myles on payroll for, for all this.
You can get commission.
Come on now.
Right.
No, I just want to make sure we
Influencer
support the home
code.
team.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say
appreciate
we should plug what I know we've hit on it all throughout the episode, but tell us about the stuff you're working on.
Yeah,
Plug yourself.
No, I mean, right now, kind of everything I do it with a few other people. So right now I have Baggy. That's kind of my thing. It's kind of like my baby. That was what I started. So I spend time on it, good bit of time on it. I have another brand that I became involved with in December, which is the hat you're wearing. It's called Circle Author. Kind of a little bit different stylistically. Own it with a guy named Daniel, just brilliant creative, does a lot of graphic designing for graphic designs for like Green Day and like YG, just
wow.
like mad cool dude.
Yeah.
And then I started this printing studio where we're a creative company. I do design. We do graphic design. I want to rebrand my company. I want to rebrand my podcast, whatever. We can do that. A lot of what we're doing right now, though, is production and printing of apparel. And, we just did some golf balls, whatever. And still in the early stages of grinding. I mean, I'm on the phone all day. You asked about balance earlier. Like, I have none. I try to have, boundaries. But I have no balance. I wake up. Probably my cat, which I hated cats. My wife had one when we got married, so just accepted it. And it wakes me up every morning at I don't even have an alarm clock. It wakes me up at 5:30. So I wake up, I go to the gym, whatever. I don't even really lift weights. I like to do cardio and then get in the steam and sauna. More into the wellness side.
Yeah.
I'll be selling y'all essential oils later.
Yeah, VO2 max and
But I'm on my phone. I've kind of set up my life where I work from my office. We're right down Valleydale in Pelham. I work from my office, my warehouse, creative studio there. But I'm really just working off my phone computer from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. And I've had to really learn how to, put the phone down. Here's times you need to be intentional with your family. Now, there are times where it's like my wife goes to bed and I need to work for 3 more hours. So I'm in the grind phase for sure. I'm in that season of I need to be putting in the work. And then with this tour caddy thing, we started it was an idea that me and my buddy had. He is an engineer, built kind of a substitution for a QR code where it was like a tap device. It can take you to any website, any link. Exited its company within 2 years to a Silicon Valley big company over there. We had the idea. We're like, hey, we're both doing stuff. Let's start something in the golf world. I'm in the golf industry. Spit around a few ideas, and then we were like, yo, what if we do this automatic golf ball dispenser? And I was like, idiotic, never will work. They got Top Golf, they have pyramids, range balls, whatever. And then he's an engineer. He went and built some tooling mechanism for it. We got literally a elementary prototype of it. And we have still have a video of it in August. He hit me in October. And it was one of those moments where it was he was like, hey, I'm going to do this. Are you in? We had the idea together, came up with the name, designed it, all these things. He was like, hey, do you want to do this? And everything in me was I don't have time. I'm about to get, no, I should not be doing this. It was one of those moments where I was like, if this dude blows this up, I'm going to remember the time I was sitting on the couch watching Aquaman 2. And I was like, no. I'm too busy. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And it's been probably one of the more surprising, not that I didn't believe in it, but it's been the thing that's taken off the fastest business-wise, where we're in some really cool conversations with different people and, possibly collaborating with some big influencers in the space and different stores. So I spent a lot of time on Vision and Tour Caddy, and then the clothing brands kind of just intermittently throughout the day. That's a passion of mine too. I love it. So I try to not create for the sale, but just create to to create. Yeah, it's what Rick Rubin said. Every creation is an offering to God. So like, put it out there. People like it, cool. If people don't, cool. But you exercise the muscle.
I love it. Well, Mr. Rizzo, it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
bro.
Thank you, man. I learned so much from you guys today and gleaned a lot from this conversation. It was a great birthday gift. I told him, I was like, it was a good gift for my wife on my birthday. So she's like, you can go yap with these guys for a few hours and just spend intentional time with me. But thank you so much for having me on. I think this podcast is going to do a lot of cool things, have a lot of cool conversations, and really build into something special. And Myles, I just appreciate your friendship, man.
Of course.
And look forward to doing a lot of life with you. And today was great. I love having conversations and meet people in Birmingham who are doing really cool things and even better people. So thank you.
Yeah, dude.
On the up and up.
Pleasure.
On the up and up.
Thanks, fellas.
Oh.
All right. That's a wrap, I think.
That was fun. Thank you guys so
no
much,
song?
man.
No.
I always forget what the song is.
Okay,
And I
fair enough.
Add it in.
there's a certain
Dreams and nightmares.
Yeah, literally.